Let's do a little bit of theological geography, if you'll indulge a preacher. This is a map of basically the Toledo area. If you remember it, Community of Christ Lutheran Church, we're down, I don't know, here by the W key, I guess. But this is Toledo, and there's the Maumee Bay, and there it empties out into Lake Erie. Even if we don't live right on the edge of the lake, my guess is you got some familiarity with how this whole water system works. And you probably know the water basically flows from Maumee Bay out into the rest of Lake Erie, where it continues its journey eventually out toward Lake Ontario and then out to the Atlantic Ocean. That's several steps down the road, but basically how the water flows. So here's the question. Why does the water move from Maumee Bay in this direction out toward the lake? What makes it go in that particular direction? Well, let's rule some things out. It's not that the water in Maumee Bay is intelligent and thinks, I'll flow out to Lake Erie and then sometime Lake Erie will pay me back and get me more water in return. There's no back and forth. There's no tides on the Great Lakes. There's not enough of size in the Great Lakes that sometimes the water flows this way and then the tides bring it back this way. That's not how it works. What keeps the Maumee Bay flowing outward this way into Lake Erie is that Maumee Bay itself is fed by, you guessed it, the Maumee River, the river that flows right near our neck of the woods through Waterville and working its way northward toward Lake Erie. It's the river that's the source that fills the bay, and then from the bay it flows outward toward the lake. In other words, at no point is anybody in the bay going, well, we'll only give out to the lake as long as it pays us back in return. There is never an assumption that the bay is going to get paid back by the lake. Instead, the bay only does what it can, flowing and letting the water pass through it because it keeps getting fed by the water from the Maumee River. That's how rivers flow into bays and from bays into lakes, right? That's sort of like basic 5th grade social studies geography. And while the basic ideas of how a river and a lake work are probably pretty obvious to us, the theology of it is the hitch. Jesus puts at the heart of his understanding of who God is and who we are an understanding that we are, well, an awful lot like the Maumee Bay. We're fed by the flow of God's love into us, and that love then flows through us to other people, so that my interaction with other people isn't based on what they'll do for me in return. When I interact with other people, I don't think, oh, well, I'll be nice to them because later on they'll be nice in return to me, like the ebb and flow of the tides. Jesus says, no, we will be people who love even those who aren't kind back to us in return. We'll love even our enemies, even those who persecute us. We will give generously even to people who won't pay us back. Why? Because we're a lot more like the bay. We're fed by a source, a stream that comes from the river. So we're not interested in, will we get paid back by the lake? We're constantly fed by the flow of God's love into our life. In other words, what happens in the Christian life is less that I make deals with other people, or I'll love you if you'll love me back, like a transaction, but rather that God's love operates through us and flows through us. We love in the same way that God loves. And God's love, Jesus insists, is unconditional, is given even to people who don't love God back. We're going to hear this coming Sunday. Jesus insists that God is kind even to the ungrateful and the wicked, that God loves God's enemies, that God loves us even when we are dead set turned away from God. And if that's how we've been loved, that's our posture toward the world. It's almost like we can't help but love that way because it's God's love that keeps flowing through us. So many voices around us in the world want to see all of our relationships with other people like they are reducible to transactions or deals. I'll be good to you if I get something in return. I'll help you if there's a reasonable assumption I'll get something back from you. That's like imagining the bay is going to have a negotiation with the lake. I'll give you water if you give me something back. That's not how it works. The bay is constantly fed by the river and can't help but let that same water flow through it into the lake and out into the world. You and I had been met with the love of God that welcomed us, accepted us, claimed us, calls us beloved, even when we have nothing to offer God back, even when we were enemies of God, the scriptures say. And because we've been loved with that kind of embrace, with that kind of unconditional grace and mercy, that flows through us so that we become people who love our enemies as well, who are good to those even who will not return in kind. And we can think in terms of doing good to other people without reducing it to a calculus of what will I get in return. In a lot of ways, we are river and bay people to be the people of God. People who are constantly fed by the source of the spring of the water of life that comes from God and letting that flow through us. So it's never about, have I done enough loving of my enemies to get God to love me? That's always got it backwards. It's God's love flows through us, to us first, as free gift, and from us, through us, then out into the world. And because what keeps recharging us is God, the source, the river, we don't have to worry about whether other people return in kind to us. And we don't have to see the world constantly as simply a matter of transactions or deals. What will I get out of it? To be a Christian in so many ways is simply to take Jesus seriously, that we will constantly be fed by the unending flow of God's unconditional love. And when you take that seriously, it changes how you relate to everybody else. And I don't have to worry about whether they will be kind back to me or they'll do me a favor in return. I can love the way I have been first loved by God, the way I'm constantly being loved by God, even right now. That's what we're going to take a look at this coming Sunday as we dig into the heart of Jesus' Sermon on the Plain from Luke's Gospel. We hope you'll join us for that conversation and worship this Sunday. See you then.